So with that, let's bring in State Department Spokesman Tommy Pigott. As President Trump has pointed out, Tommy, it's been very difficult when you wipe out the entire top level of leadership of Iran in terms of like who you even negotiate with. But it does seem like the president has found people to negotiate with. Those negotiations might be a little bit stalled, but at least they're dealing with people. Where are we right now with those negotiations?
Well, look, as the president indicated, we are in a situation where talks are ongoing. We're continuing to engage. But the president is not satisfied with what he has seen. And he has been crystal clear about the objectives here from the beginning of this operation, but also from the beginning of this administration, even before, and that is the reality that the Iranian regime cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. And the decisive outcomes we've seen from Operation Epic Fury have already made the world safer. The fact that we've seen the decimation of their military, the decimation of their navy. But President Trump has been clear he's going to see this objective be fulfilled, that the Iranian regime cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Obviously, the game changer here has been his handling of the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody is paying something of a price of having the strait shut down. I would argue that no one is paying a heavier price for that right now than Iran itself. Where are we in terms of negotiating a way to reopen the strait?
Well, 2 points here. First is the fact that as part of Operation Economic Fury, we are seeing the Iranian regime lose hundreds of millions of dollars every single day. This blockade being a part of that, the fact that we've had maximum pressure sanctions to make sure that they cannot have funds to fuel their illicit activities. That has been something that's been going on from the beginning of this administration and continues, including recent announcements from the State Department and Treasury Department this week on that. On the point in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, the Secretary of State describing just a few days ago how we're not going to be in a position where we normalize the Iranian regime thinking that they can decide who goes through the strait. That is not going to happen. The president having that blockade of Iranian ships in Iranian ports, we're seeing that, but also the president unleashing American energy, building a strong and resilient economy, and we're seeing many tankers actually come to the United States to buy American energy. So the president's been very clear about his objectives here, and he's also been very clear and why it's so important to have that unleashing of American energy to make sure that we can produce our energy here at home.
And so we know from reports on the ground that obviously the people of Iran are suffering incredibly from the economic, the country being on the verge of economic collapse. Do we have any real evidence that the regime itself is actually suffering as badly?
Well, you've seen, as the president's indicated, the first string of leadership, the second, the third, all being killed by Operation Epic Fury, the decisive outcomes that we have seen through Operation Epic Fury. The regime for decades, instead of using their wealth to fund water infrastructure, energy infrastructure, food infrastructure, has instead used it to fund terrorist proxies, that ballistic missile program, their nuclear weapons program. That's part of why we've seen that maximum pressure policy. Those problems that they had before this operation began have only gotten worse. Inflation, economic problems. The president and the Secretary of State have both described how we want to see the Iranian people be prosperous, but they have a regime that is so different from their people in the sense of a regime that is this theocratic, lunatic regime that we've seen for decades that has not met the needs of their own people and instead used it on destabilizing activities. So we have this maximum pressure policy. We're going to address their ability to fund these activities. We're going to be clear in our objectives like the president has, and we're seeing these problems that are the regime's own making because they refuse to address the needs of their people.
And of course, it's probably important to remember that even before Operation Epic Fury, there were protests in Iran, and those protests sprang up because of economic uncertainty inside Iran, facing, with protests against the regime. Tommy Pigott, thank you so much for breaking it down for us.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.